when I was 14, I went over to a friend's house and spent the night over there. And she invited me. She was like, oh my gosh, there's this house party around the corner. And me being a good kid and involved in extracurricular activities and things like that, I had a really bad feeling, like a gut feeling, they say. I now I call it a God feeling, a gut feeling is a God feeling. It was like, hey, I felt like I shouldn't go, but I ignored it. And so we went and there's this big house party. And right when I got inside the house, she ended up leaving me alone. And I still wonder to this day if I was set up. I'm not sure. I can't say for sure. But she left me alone. And immediately I was approached by an older gentleman, physically very attractive. And I was vulnerable. I was in the situation. And so he asked me to come into another room with him. And he started talking to me. And there's something called the grooming process that happened for the next couple of months where he started to romance me. I started to, I really, because I had grown up in a home with parents still together, I truly just wanted to be with, with somebody. Yeah. And so I thought he was my boyfriend. I thought he was my boyfriend. And this is the moment I remember when everything changed. He used to take me a lot to the Hollywood Hills. So we went to the Hollywood Hills and he pointed to one house, and he would always point to this one house. And he said, Ashley, that's going to be our house one day. And so I was like excited. I'm like, oh my gosh, he's going to propose to me. Like, I mean, I had my whole life was planned. And so that same day we went and there was this, I remember the road and everything. There was a windy road. We came down and he took me to this park and he told me to get out of the car. And once I got out of the car, there was these two excursions that pulled up. Sorry, sometimes it's hard for me to talk about this stuff, but these two cars that pulled up. And that's when he slapped me across the face and he said, you're going to be working for me now. And my life as I knew it was not the same, since that day. I was introduced to two other pimps, and there was so many minors. I mean, I remember looking at this book, and this may get a little graphic, but it reminds me of the movie The Sound of Freedom that's out now. They show images of these kids, and I didn't see anybody that young at that time, but definitely in the early teens, And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, I know her, and I seen her, and looking through this book, and there was all these graphic photos, and stuff, and so that happens, and it's not just in another country; it's here in the United States. And it happened to me on the east side of Palmdale, which is just a few hours from LA, And I think that my message is to bring awareness. I've actually, I did this before it became popular. I was out there talking about this, and it was like almost like a weird, nobody, hush, hush, don't talk about it, But it was my story, and it happened to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this happened when you were how old?
I was 14.
14 years old. So this guy made you think he was your boyfriend. You were falling in love, but it was all part of the plot. Like, all of it was part of the plot.
Yes. And what's interesting is he was actually being groomed by a pimp that was at a higher up level than him.
Wow.
So it was just like this weird hierarchy. And I only met that guy one time. He was on his third strike, which means he could go to prison at any time, obviously, for certain things that he was involved in.
Right.
But what I realized is that there was even grooming for the pimps that were, right, because nobody thinks about that. It's like, how do these pimps and how do these men get into that? The same way, how does a stripper become a stripper or a prostitute? It's like they were brought in that, somebody had to groom them to think that way, I've met some prostitutes that they just grew up like that. Their mom does it, and that's how they live. And I'm like,
Yeah.
You know?
And that's so crazy. It was so simple as you went to a party and your friend left you alone.
Yeah.
Like, that's all it took.
That's all it took for me.
And I think about like how many young girls in high school are doing this every weekend.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
you
yeah.
know?
And it's gotten worse. I mean, there's 2 million kids that are in, human trafficking right now. 1 million kids go missing, and I mean, I've stories from just getting snatched up off the street, to the Romeo pimps. They call them Romeo pimps, where, they pretend to be your boyfriend. And then I also did a lot of ministry work and nonprofit charity work in Las Vegas. So I've heard so many different types of trafficking. Mine was more of the Romeo pimp, and the seducing and the romancing and things like that.